It's time for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Welcome to PRosé, where we drink while we talk to authors and have fun. And I am drinking a fabulous 2016 Silver Oak Cabernet. How about you?
So we had a lovely author on last week, and we were talking about book clubs, and I thought I would try her Lemon Drop Lolita.
Oh, okay.
It's ginger beer with some lemon juice and some jalapeno syrup and a little swig of rum. So it's delish. But I substituted the rum for the vodka. So yeah, okay. I love it. It's good.
Rum and jalapeno juice? Are you kidding? That doesn't sound good to me.
It's sweet and spicy. It warms the soul.
Okay. I'll drink and this glass, it looks like a lot bigger in your screen than it really is.
Because it is.
Because it's big. Hey, before we get to our fabulous author who is in the green room, did you see the survey that came out today by MetLife? It said that the majority of women, 80% of women that either lost their job during the pandemic or quit, say that they're ready to come back to work, but they no longer want to do what they were doing before. They all want jobs in STEM. Can you believe that? I think it's fantastic.
I think that's so fascinating that there would be such a direct focus into STEM. I mean, certainly we've all reevaluated our priorities, but I like storytelling.
I couldn't be an engineer. I'm horrible in math. It wouldn't be me. I just, even if I wanted to, it just wouldn't happen. But our author today, actually her book, The Atomic City Girls, was about girls who were involved in making the atomic bomb. So maybe they read that book and they said, hey, I want to do this. Her name is Janet Beard. She was born and raised in East Tennessee. She studied screenwriting at NYU, and she went on to earn an MFA in creative writing from the New School. And as I said, her best-selling book, The Atomic City Girls, is fantastic. Now her new novel, The Ballad of Laurel Springs, what we're going to talk about today, it's about multiple generations of women in one East Tennessee family haunted by violence and redeemed by music. And fans of historical fiction with female leads are going to absolutely love this book. She currently lives in Columbus, Ohio, which is my alma mater. Yay! So please raise a glass with us to Janet Beard.
Welcome.
Hi.
We understand you're not drinking, so we're drinking for you.
I'm not. Although that lemon drop Lolita, that sounded delicious. So maybe I'll go make one after. I love ginger beer. Anything with ginger beer.
Yeah. I love ginger beer.
How long have you lived in Columbus?
About 10 years. So are you a Buckeye?
I am. Went to Ohio State. My whole family did. I didn't realize in high school that there was a choice. I just thought everybody went to Ohio State.
Sure. There wasn't a choice.
I used to work at the university, and my husband is a professor there. So go back.
Oh, fantastic. So you're now OH, right?
That's
10
right.
years?
IO.
I love Cindy. Are you doing the audiobook, right?
Yes.
The Ballad of Laurel Springs, which is probably the thing to do. My first question about this book, Janet, is which came first, your love of the music or the story? How did that work?
It started with the music, definitely. I'd been interested in these songs really for as long as I can remember. I heard them growing up, and I was particularly curious about these strange songs called murder ballads, which tell the story of a young woman being murdered, and a lot of them have been around for hundreds of years. They go all the way back to, you can find versions in England and Scotland, and people brought them over, and they've been a staple of Appalachian music for the past couple of centuries. So I was curious about those songs, and so that was definitely where it started.
I tell you, going up through the Blue Ridge Mountains, there is such a that culture of this music and the history. It's so
Yeah,
vibrant.
absolutely.
So when I saw your book, I was just sucked in, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so moving.
I just watched the documentary on Dolly Parton, and I really didn't know that much about her. But they were saying that she's got thousands of songs that she's never recorded, that she's written.
Amazing.
And when she didn't talk much about her family, and then I started getting interested in your book, and I'm thinking, I wonder if Dolly has written a lot of songs with family secrets, and that's why she doesn't talk much about her family. What do
Yeah.
you think?
I don't know. I do know she has talked about also being interested in these murder ballads when she was growing up, hearing them, and that they influenced a lot of her earlier songs, which really focused on young women. You know, she was kind of telling the woman's point of view of what it was like to be a woman in the world, you know, when a lot of country music was not from that perspective. And a lot of them are really sad. I think she got a bit more upbeat as she went on. But yeah, and I grew up just down the road from where Dolly did. So we're from the same county in Tennessee. I remember when Dollywood opened and she came to open it and stuff when I was a kid. So yeah, it's definitely my neck of the woods.
That was a big thing, right? Huge Dollywood for you and for her too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's very involved. You know, she stayed very involved in the community there, and comes from a big family. So it's also it's a tourist town where I grew up. So there's a lot of people coming and going, but you know, it's also got that feeling of a small town where everyone knows everyone going back generations, and certainly, you know, you knew Dolly's family; they were around.
I was thinking of this book and contrasting it to a book that my daughter was assigned to read. And have you heard of Winter's Bone?
Oh yeah, I've seen the movie. I'll admit I have not read the book, but yeah.
Me too. That's what I've seen the movie, but I haven't read the book either.
We listened to the audiobook because, you know, I love that, and then watched the movie too. So we got both perspectives. Wow, it's just so fascinating how you've got that contrast with the strength and, you know, that comes out of it, and, you know, that the history of your book. And so, you know, what is it that pulled these women together for you? Where did you pull their stories together? Because it just feels like you're in this small town.
Yeah, well, each story happened kind of differently. I was writing them at the same time and then separately. You know, this book, just for people who haven't read it, each chapter kind of jumps forward a generation, and so you meet 9 different women through the course of the book, covering 120 years. So there's obviously a lot of different stories in there. So it was definitely a bit more jumbled than, say, like the Atomic City Girls, which I wrote in a much more straightforward way. You know, I started at the beginning and wrote through to the end. This was a bit more like I was working on this one and then that one. So yeah, so it was interesting. I wasn't always sure how they were all going to fit together when I was starting. It was a real journey to kind of figure that out, to see. And sometimes it would just be so perfect, like, oh, of course, this person is going to be this person's grandmother, and it all like comes together, and that was really fun, kind of like putting together a puzzle.
Now, Grace, who's 10 years old, has to do this genealogy report. And I was just wondering, have you done that with your family tree?
Yeah, I actually, I was a little older when I got that assignment, but when I was in high school, we did a big project that everyone at my high school did, where you had to do a big family history. So yeah, so I've done my family tree way back then, and I remember actually kind of relating in a way to the Atomic City Girls. My favorite part of that project was that one of the assignments was to interview a grandparent or someone in your family, you know. And I thought, I had grown up living next door to my grandmother. I thought I knew so much about her, and then I found when I actually sat down and asked her questions, there was so much I didn't know, including the fact I later found out that she worked on the Manhattan Project during World War II, and so that's why I say it also connects to the Atomic City Girls. So yeah, I think that was a wonderful thing to have that. because you can talk to people every day, but still not know so much about their
Right.
stories, which is part of what the book is about, really, like how each generation sort of thinks they know what happened in the past, but they're often like completely wrong, or either because secrets have been kept from them, or because they just never asked the questions, or they've made assumptions that were not correct, that sort of thing.
You don't have any secrets in your family tree?
I don't know. Nothing's very juicy that I know of, but hey.
Well, before we talk more about the current book, The Ballad of Laurel Springs, the Atomic City Girls, I don't know if you heard me in the beginning talking about how all these women right now that are re-entering the workforce want STEM jobs.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Isn't that fascinating? And I just think it excites me personally, even though I'm bad in all those subjects.
Yeah, I was personally never that interested in those subjects either, which was a funny part about writing the Atomic City Girls. I was like, oh, I never actually took physics. I better make sure I'm getting this all right.
And Hidden Figures was so great. Has anybody talked to you about a movie?
Oh, no, I'm afraid not. I would love that, though. Like, give me a call, Hollywood. I'm here.
Really, Steven Spielberg. I've got her number. Call her.
What about what do you think can inspire young girls in the Ballad of Laurel Springs?
Well, I think for me, a lot of it is about how it's kind of this conflict between, like, are we sort of doomed to repeat the mistakes of the people who come before us, or do the mistakes they've been really follow us in a way that that we can't escape? And I hope people don't take that message, because I think there's a tension there. I think that what's come before you is something you have to deal with. Like, you can't sort of hide from it, but I think you can face what you come from. And if you see patterns, if you realize there's mistakes you don't want to repeat, you can like figure out a way not to repeat them. You can consciously make the change. But I think part of that is that you do have to look back and think about what's come before. That sort of, that cliche about if we don't understand history, we'll be doomed to repeat it. I think that's true on a global level, and also true within your own family. Like, you have to understand what your parents went through and your grandparents, to sort of make sure you don't get caught in the same cycles and problems.
And maybe it will open our eyes to the fact that that so many women, after the recent cases, especially here in Florida, about the missing girl and her boyfriend. We still don't know if he killed her, whatever. But it brought to light that there are so many missing young women that we don't hear about in the news.
Yeah.
So maybe your book will bring to light the fact that we've got to stop burying these secrets.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's right. I think that's huge when it comes to, domestic violence and all of that, it can be very painful to talk about, and not something people want to think about having happened in their family or to anyone they care about. But it is important to recognize it and not stigmatize it, never make the victims feel, ashamed, even though I think that is what a lot of people do feel.
Mm-hmm. Have you been following what's happening in Virginia with the book Beloved?
No, I've sort of seen the headlines. I haven't dug too deep, but yeah.
Again, I never read the book, but I did see the movie.
I have read that book. It's actually one of my favorite books. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fascinating. Well, I didn't even know it existed until I heard about it. And, there's a lot of conversation about it being too provocative, and that, that it might trigger culture, trigger young girls who've been through difficult experiences. And my personal opinion is that, that through fictional works like this, you can destigmatize, you can open up the conversations. Yeah. And, that was another just attractant to this book, that it's dealing with a topic that isn't really talked about. You don't put that on the dinner table. Do you have children, don't you?
I have one daughter. Yeah.
One daughter. How old is she?
She's 7.
Oh my, so too young to have any of those conversations.
Yeah, yeah, we're not quite there yet, but I mean, you say that, and there are still things that we have talked about already about, not ever letting people touch you in a way you don't want to be touched, which I think is really important. Even, with little kids, it can be tickling. Like if you don't, I do remember like when she was in kind of preschool, there was some little boy who was very into tickling and she didn't like it. I was like, well, you have to tell him, no, don't tickle me. And I do think that's important for girls to be hearing, from the beginning, basically, so that we get it into our heads that, um, you know, I'm sure that little tickling boy is a perfectly fine little boy, but then you never know. He could turn into be
Right.
Absolutely.
Your female characters are very strong. Did you grow up with a lot of role models, with a lot of women in your family that you looked up to that were strong women?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, my grandmother was right next door, and even when I was very little, my great grandmother as well. So I grew up with a lot of women, and my mother, of course, as well, all around me. All these strong women who had lived, had just been through a lot, and you sort of saw that they had nothing particularly dramatic, but just the stuff of life. So
Mhm.
I sort of saw that example of how they had survived and gotten through.
Any writers in your family? Are you the first?
I'm the first professional writer, but my dad was always very into writing, and I think in books, and my grandmother as well. Well, my mother's mother was a teacher, an English teacher, and kept journals and diaries and write me little poems and things my whole life growing up. So I definitely, yeah, there was a lot of writing in the air. A lot of people who love books, and a lot of teachers. I come from a whole family of teachers. Both my parents worked in schools, so
Are you still teaching?
I'm not at the moment. But yeah, it's sort of I never did it full time, but I do really enjoy. I think as a writer, it's a fun way teaching other people about writing. I always found it helps. It's like working a sort of different muscle than you get to work when you're writing, to sort of think about the craft in that way and help other people. So yeah, I'm always open to doing more of it. But it is hard with a 7-year-old to, especially this last year, it was hard to get much of anything done
Oh, I
in
can
terms
imagine.
of school.
And will your next book be historical fiction as well?
What I'm working on right now is actually not historical fiction, so that'll be a little bit of a change. We'll see. It's a little. I sort of dipped my toes in with this one. It had, the last few chapters are more getting closer to the present. So we'll see how that goes.
Now, Cindy's favorite genre is historical fiction. Is that yours, or what? Give us some examples of some books that you just absolutely loved. You said you loved Beloved.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. Yeah, I love history. So, I've always naturally been drawn to historical fiction just because I love learning about the past. And obviously, I mean, I can't imagine very many people write historical fiction who don't like history. But I also, uh, sometimes that can be the more recent past. I think, these last few years, the books that have been like meant the most to me, I think, have been Elena Ferrante's Neapolitan novels. I just gobbled those up like a couple summers ago, and I sort of went back and read them again. Like they just meant so much to me. So favorite books, I love Alice Munro's short stories. Those are some of my favorites again that I go back to again and again. Yeah, I love speaking of historical fiction, Atonement by Ian McEwan. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, there's so many. It's so hard to pick favorites because I can just go and go and go.
And we talk to a lot of authors. Some say their partners, they don't want them around, they don't want any feedback,
Yeah.
while other authors say, oh, my wife, I make sure that she reads everything and she's very brutally honest, and that she says this character can't be doing this, that he said he was making changes. Do you let your husband read what you're doing?
No, I don't. Yeah, he usually reads it when it's finished. Yes, it's not really fair because he's a philosopher, and I can't like I literally can't understand what he writes, so it doesn't quite seem fair that he should be able to to comment on my stuff when I'm like, it's like reading another language trying to read his philosophy. So that's where I go down.
That makes some interesting conversations over the dinner table, though.
but not usually about philosophy.
So what got you into writing?
Oh gosh. It's one of those things I've been doing really as long as I can remember. As soon as I
When you were little?
Yeah. I was writing little stories when I was my daughter's age, when I was 7 or so. And, I always loved books. I was a complete bookworm. And yeah, like I say, pretty much as soon as I started becoming a bookworm, I was trying to do my own. And even like, it's funny, when I was very little, I remember I was kind of a drama geek and like wanted to be a movie star and actress when I grew up. But even then, I would really spend a lot of time like coming up with these like movies that I would star in, and I was kind of making them up in my head. So when I got older, I sort of realized, maybe what I'm interested in isn't actually like being a star, but it's the stories that I've been making up that I want to tell. So.
And is your daughter, is she writing?
She doesn't really like writing. She has become a bookworm over the past, couple of years. It's been so exciting to watch as she suddenly, everything clicked and she figured out reading, and it was great because it did coincide with the pandemic. So it was really helpful to be able, in those long days of not having any or virtual school, I could send her up to her room and she would read, which was lovely. So yeah, so she's caught the reading bug, but she says she doesn't really like writing, but it is a lot of pressure since, like I say, my husband has written philosophy books. I write books. Like, she's probably wise to just say, I don't want any part of that and do something else.
Or pick up poetry like my daughter has, just like, this is my own art craft, and it's, you guys are so different. So show her some poems.
Yeah.
So she's writing a lot of poems, Cindy, your daughter?
Yes, she's been exploring her creativity. She's been a dancer since she was 4. And so there's a lot of, fluidity with the body, but this is, poetry's given her a whole nother art form just to share, thoughts, feelings, perspectives. And when she found it last year, it just was perfect timing. So, it's really beautiful.
That's great.
That's so sweet. Has she written any poems about you?
Not that she shared with me. No.
So we've talked to some authors too, that they drink a little bit when they're writing, or there's these little idiosyncrasies. Do you have anything that you must do, or a place you must be when you write, or is it just...
No, not at all. I'm pretty flexible. I think, like I used to very much like working in coffee shops, but that's become less appealing in this day and age of pandemic. So now I just tend to work from home in my little office. But yeah, I like music. It depends. Sometimes I like, so in my own world that I can listen to whatever, but sometimes it has to be like without words. So, but I do like to always have music. Obviously, I mean, I shouldn't say obviously, but like, I just wrote a whole book about folk music or inspired by folk music. So I listened to a lot of the actual songs that are in the book while I was writing it. And that was great because it could immediately put me in the mood if, I needed to get in that space.
And how did the people in Tennessee, have they just embraced you with this book?
Yeah, well, I haven't actually had a chance to go down to Tennessee yet, but yeah, like it seems that there's been a great reaction. There's a wonderful website actually in Tennessee dedicated to books and the literary culture there called Chapter 16. So they wrote a beautiful review, and it's especially nice to hear people from the actual place responding to it.
And I read that in Columbus, I think you did either a book signing or something with someone who sang songs from the book.
That is happening next week. It hasn't.
Oh, that's happening. Well, tell everybody about it.
Yeah, it'll be November 11th, so a week from tomorrow, I believe. At Gramercy Books, which is a fabulous independent bookstore in Bexley. You probably know Bexley since you're from Columbus.
Yeah.
This musician, singer-songwriter named Parker McDonald is going to be performing some of the songs, and I think I might actually sing a duet with him, which will be really exciting for everyone.
That's awesome. I think you should do that everywhere.
Yeah.
I love it. That's very, very folksy.
Yeah.
Now, what would you sing? Which song would you sing?
Well, I think he's going to perform a couple of the murder ballads to give people a taste, and I'll do some reading as well. And then I think there's the one song, Little Sparrow, that I think we might sing together just because, well, it's easy for one thing, and a bit more, it's not exactly upbeat, but nobody gets murdered in it at least, so it's a little less dark than some of the other songs in the book.
Nobody gets murdered. Cindy just loves watching Criminal Minds. That's why she loves your book so much. She just loves anything murder. She loves it.
Give me a little, creepy crawly guys, but then also the happy ending. We've got it all figured out, right?
Well, I mean, I think these songs, I think, were just like the Criminal Minds of, the Middle Ages and the 19th century.
Yeah.
People have always been interested in these stories and wanted to tell them and share them.
Yes.
Was it the Muffin Man that was warning about, I thought the Muffin Man killed children or something.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Oh my, well, maybe
don't drink any more of those lemon drop things. Stop now.
No. So my daughter told me this years ago. She's like, the Muffin Man. Do you know the Muffin Man? He lives under, like, it was a warning, like, stay away from the Muffin Man. And she goes, that totally warped that for me.
Yeah.
You will never look at the Muffin Man the same. You're welcome.
It's probably going to be a horror movie soon, The Muffin Man.
Crazy. Crazy. I love that you have really strong female characters.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes my heart happy. And I'm sure your daughter will be so proud of you once she's old enough to read any of your books.
Yeah, I hope so. I dedicated this book to her, and like, she didn't care at all. She was like, okay. I showed her. I was like, that's you. And she's like, whatever, Mom.
I want to compare.
Are there wizards in this book? I'm not interested.
And your family?
That my parents are super supportive and like so proud. So yeah, that's been lovely to share my whole journey with them, because I truly wouldn't, it's all because of the amazing support I got growing up that I've been able to become anything, and they were also always very supportive of me pursuing being a writer. They didn't think that was crazy. They said, go for it. And I know that that doesn't always happen. I've certainly had other friends who pursued careers in the arts and didn't get that kind of support from their parents. So it's always meant a lot to me that they both were right behind me. And yeah.
So before we let you go, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Well, first of all, read. That's the most important thing. Read everything you can and think about what you're reading too. You can't just, you can't just read it for fun. You have to like put a little thought into it. How was this written? Why was it written? All of that. And then, I think it's also just important to live life too, because, it is true that you have to find something to write about. And even if it's historical fiction, or fantasy, something set in a totally different world, you just have to get some life experience and experience of other people, I think, to really be able to make it come alive. Even, like I say, even if it's in the past or even if it's in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, the book is The Ballad of Laurel Springs by Janet Beard. We toast you, and I know now you're going to have time when you leave us to have your own glass of wine or whatever it might be. We thank you so much for being on PRosé with us, and best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Join us next week for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.